today we got to play Formosa Tea. So we are farmers and processors. I guess we run tea businesses.
Yes, pretty much.
But before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and that notification bell because board games are amazing, and that's what we do here at Legends of Nirvana. Now, Rob, can you tell us a little bit more about...
Oh, I guess. So this is, again, Formosa Tea. This version, which is the first edition, came out in 2019 by TMG. It's kind of a worker placement with some track movement. Overall rank on Board Game Geek is 3,103 with a rating of 7.4. Plays 2 to 4 people, and they lied when it says it played 40 to 90 minutes. So it took us forever. It says it plays as ages 12 and up. I don't know. I think maybe a little bit.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. So again, originally published by TMG, designed by. And I apologize, obligatory apologies if I jack up the names, but Chu Long Kao, art by Samix and Huang Yu Wen. Now, this version, there's no MSRP because TMG is no longer in business. So it was, although there was a Kickstarter just last year by TBD Games, so you may be able to find one of those versions. But I did find a Board Game Geek. This version was for $50. But elsewhere, it's kind of pricey. Noble Knight, Zulu Games is all above $85.
Oh,
so
wow.
the T stayed in business. It was just the M and G that went under and replaced by B and D.
That's a good point.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about quality of components. You have your wooden cubes. You have some uniquely shaped wooden meeples, to be fair. Other than that, a lot of cardboard chits. I'm not really sure if there's a linen finish on the boards.
And I think the little play boards, although small, pretty good thickness cardboard though.
Yeah, the cards are actually pretty nice quality. They do got a linen finish. They got some decent thickness to them as well.
And I did see the Kickstarter version. They basically made everything bigger. So bigger player boards and bigger main board.
Yeah. Overall, there's nothing too exciting though.
Right.
Except for like the linen card finish. So I'm probably going to give this a 6, maybe 6.5. Because there's nothing that spectacular.
Yeah, there really isn't nothing special about it. So
yeah.
I think 6.5 is a good score.
Yeah, you do get also a little bag to mix your cubes in.
But it's a plain linen bag.
It's just your plain standard bag. So yeah, 6.5 is fine.
All right, so moving on to theme is that you are in the tea business, and so you've got to go and collect the different tea and then end up processing them and then eventually sell them either to external markets or internal markets, all of which can get you victory points. As far as thematically, yeah, I mean, you are picking up the different kinds of tea, then you're sorting them, and then you end up processing the individual tea in different ways. And moving along that track, ideally, hopefully, to get a nice, flavorful tea. Although sometimes you do end up with bad tea.
You did that a lot.
But you perfumed it a lot, so nobody noticed.
I made it smell better.
Yeah.
So, where I only made good tea, even though I never drink tea.
Not to brag.
So, I didn't win, though. So, that was a little, not necessarily, that won't get you to winning.
Right.
So overall, thematically, I think it's all right. The artwork's not bad. It's not great. It's it's okay. And same thing with the theme. It's kind of incorporated into the gameplay. So I'm probably going to give it a 7. Nothing outstanding, but
I disagree.
solid.
I disagree. I think it's a little bit higher for me. And the reason why is that this is one of those games where the mechanics really fit the theme. I mean, the theme, the artwork, I think is really great. The character cards and the boat card for the market cards, I think the art is really nice. So I think I'm going to go up to an 8. So I really think all those mechanics, it just makes sense.
Yeah,
so.
I will agree that the card art is really nice. It's the other art that for me was a little lacking. But no, I agree with you. The card art was pretty good. What about you, Randy?
I'll split the difference and go 7.5, since even though I'm not in the middle.
Okay. You're always on the left.
I don't think the art is wowing me, but I do like the fact that they made it, at least it would appear, all appearances, the boats are all, they're all custom for each individual card. But other than that, it's just a lot of track movement and iconography and some basic terrain So I don't think the art on the board is anything spectacular, nor are the player boards. Matter of fact, I had a little confusion with the colors swap. That bothered me.
And that's a good point. There is some color. I don't know if it's because of saturation or what when the printing, but not all the colors.
Well, the yellow
match.
tea makes sense to be yellow, but the cubes that reflect it are orange.
Well, that
they
was should have gotten yellow.
Yeah,
they should have gotten
there's
yellow.
There's no reason they shouldn't have been yellow cubes.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the board, you got yellow and reddish brown and green. And the orange kind of looks closer to the reddish brown color than the yellow by far.
But then you have the brown, and that's clear. But yeah,
and the brown should have been black. So
yeah. So there's some confusion there.
Yeah, I agree. But so
all right. So then let's move on to the rulebook. I will tell you right now.
Do I have to be the bearer of bad tidings in this review?
I will tell you right now that the amount of time it took us to learn this game because around the rule confusion bothered even me. And I don't even read the rules.
Yes.
Okay, we had to look up videos.
That is by far the most time-consuming part of the game.
It
and
took
it's an 8-page rulebook.
Yeah.
It's an 8-page
Very deceiving.
rulebook.
Very deceiving.
It's there's some translation issues that were in here,
right.
which wasn't even the bad part. The bad part was the confusion around what the rules were doing. It didn't have any illustrations for most of the rules. You couldn't really get a grasp of what you were supposed to be doing with this action. The terminology was used throughout the book instead of the actual detail about the actions. So it led to a lot of having to reread and read again and go back online and looking it up, trying to find answers to what this was supposed to be doing all throughout the process.
The first 2 rounds were pretty miserable because of that. So there's a 4-round game. The first 2 rounds were pretty rough. By that point, though, we did learn it, and it became a whole lot more streamlined, and it was a lot easier, and I actually started to enjoy myself towards the second end.
I think game 3 or 4 would be a lot more fun versus our first game, or even first 2 games.
If you played it back to back. If you're not, you're going to have to go through the same pain and misery of trying to learn it again if you put it on the shelf for a year or 2. So the rulebook starts with the component list. I like the way they did it. They actually bolded the numbers of how many pieces there are, so it's very clear. That piece I did like. The game board, they have just points and numbers of reference to different areas of both the main board and then your player board, which I guess was helpful, but they've inundated it with numbers. And then the setup wasn't horrible.
Yeah, I think we went through that pretty easy.
But the gameplay starts on page 3 and only lasts to page 7. And that's like only a quarter of page 7, so it's really only like 4 pages.
It was a slog fest.
But yeah, reading through it, it was like, what does this mean? What does that mean? All the way through. So what should have been a 5-10 minute read turned into like an hour of interpretation and trying to understand what each thing was doing. And then there was the character descriptions on the back. That was pretty straightforward. And then the historical event cards that happen each year. I still don't get the grasp of what those were, why they had those, because they added to it, but most of them, at least the ones we got, were end of game scoring stuff.
Well, it's a slow reveal of end game scoring. But
it's not revealed because it's already up on the board and table, so it's not really an event.
No, but I mean, it's not. I don't see it any different than the other in-game scoring cards.
Yeah,
right.
You're slowly releasing the information, like, oh, this is now worth victory points. Oh, this is now worth victory points.
But you could look at it at any time. It's already on the table.
It's just more pretty art.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
Well, and it adds to the theme. I mean, I think it would be more interesting if it was kind of flipped over and then you kind of discovered it.
Yeah, I mean that would make more sense. Except for that, like if it were truly an event, you would have time to prepare for it, which is what. It's like, that's why I kept asking during the game, what's the event for this round? So I think I could prepare for it if need be. But then there was never anything to prepare for. It was always end of game, end of round scoring. I was like, okay, well, I think there's only one card that was actually referencing anything that happened in that round.
The one we got end of round was the very last card, so it didn't really matter. So.
And I did see that, and maybe it would have made a difference, but on the Kickstarter version, there was like double the amount of these year cards.
Yeah.
So there definitely been more variety.
So, yeah, as far as the rule book goes, I'm probably going to give this a 4. I don't think it's as bad as some of the ones we've seen lately, but
it's
it
certainly
was pretty
not the
bad.
best.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the actual gameplay. So basically, you start out the round with 4 different players. There is an extra one, so I assume player count does matter on how many workers you get, so do pay attention to that. And so you have a couple of options to go on the board. Obviously, you can actually go to the farms and get some tea leaves. So these tea leaves, once you decide, so for example, if I had this worker, let's do this again. So if I had this worker and say I went here, I get to choose either to pick all of one color or one of each color, okay? So in this case, I'm going to pick one of each color because I'm kind of accumulating some brown over here. I'm also going to be looking at the water or the weather tile and seeing that it has one water tile. So I'm going to put both of these in my level 1 basket.
That's how wet it is.
That's how wet it is, and it takes processing time to dry it and things like that. So just be aware that the higher levels means it is harder to process, which means you may end up with bad tea.
Why'd you point at me? Randy made bad tea too.
Only once.
Okay.
And I only did it once.
Yeah, but you actually scented yours and tried to pass
That's
it off.
true. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but still,
Hey.
it's like, oh, he made bad tea.
Well, I dumped mine in the river, so there's that.
All right. So, and then you put that on there. So that is considered one action. Another action, obviously, is to process your tea. So if I were to take that same worker, I'm going to say, hey, I've got 3 brown here, so I can start processing my batch, because you do kind of need a minimum of 3 to actually get some scoring.
To get good stuff.
To get some scoring. You can use lower batches, but I just...
And
with all the work that you have to do to process it, it's really not advantageous to do that with less than 3.
You can't necessarily use the same worker, though, because remember, you got tea experts and you got tea farmers.
Oh, right. So I have a farmer. I couldn't have played him.
Right. So the farmers can just go on one side of the board, and that's about it, where they can either harvest or sell the tea off to the market. But then you also have the tea expert.
Yeah. So my tea expert, they're going to go here. Okay. So I'm going to start processing my brown. So each row processes a different color of tea leaf. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move this over to the brown section of my board. I had these on the wrong one. Okay. So I move the 2 to the 2, the 2 ones on the 1 level. So I get to remove a water from that. So I'm going to take my level 2 and make it a level 1 because I did some extra drying process. Now, at any point, if someone then goes and place a worker in this particular area of the farm, I will automatically be able to move forward in my processing based on the number of workers there. So if Randy takes his turn and ends up going here, there would be 3 workers, and I would actually get to go up 3 and take each one of those actions. So for example, this one allows me to move a level 1 into the flavor. I don't know what's actually called, but we called it Flavor Town. Because it's getting a particular flavor. So that would be, and then this would be 2. So if I had a level 2, I do not, it would go over into the Flavor Town. So that was basically a useless thing. And then over here, I get to take 2 level 0s into Flavor Town. I actually don't have that ability because I only have 2. So as of right now, I have 1 into flavor and 2 level 1s. Now,
when you place them, you also got the ability, since you played 3 of them, to move up on the tech track.
Correct. So I would move up. Oh, and then look, I would actually get a token that allows me to put a level 2 into the flavor. Now, this token, so I actually had 3 tokens that I could use, but in that case, so I could remove 2 water, which actually would have put me there, which then would have let me do the flavor. So you'll gain these as you build up technology, and those are super useful, and it allows you to process some bigger batches and get better quality of tea. So that's very, very relevant.
And the neat thing is when you do a process, you can move those tokens around. So
Correct. So, and if someone else goes there, I will end up over here at some point. Now, when it comes back to my turn, I could then pick this up and finish my tea. So I have 3 flavor. So it is now good tea because the water level is 0, because these are all worth 0. If it's 3 or more, it's considered bad. If it's if you have less than 2 flavor, then it is considered normal tea. So I actually have 3 flavors. So this goes here. Now 3 flavor, you can see there's a little cheat sheet on your board. I would end up getting 3 victory points. Obviously, the more flavor that you have in your tea, the higher victory points, because the better quality of tea it is. All right, and then that means I get my worker back, though, so I can use it in this round before I have to pass. So that is actually very beneficial to kind of keep track of that. So the other action I can take is, now that I have this tea, I need to sell it. So there's a couple of options. Either I can get it scented and gain victory points for doing scented, and that's this track here. So I just go on here, move as many cubes as I want. Not as strategic wise, you might not want to do that with good tea, because good tea is actually more valuable to sell to the foreign market. But if you have bad tea or normal tea, that is a great way to get victory points. The other option, and then, is to go to the different markets. So I have this market action with an additional bonus. One gives you a free tea, one lets you move up on a processing track, another one allows you to upgrade your technology track, along with selling. Now you have to sell before you trigger that other ability that it talks about. So for example, looking at it, I do have 2 brown and a green, so I can end up trading and getting 16 victory points for that. And because it's good tea, I can actually, good or normal tea, you can keep the card. Now, the cards are worth victory points at the end of the game, if you can level up your technology tracks enough to where they're worth victory points. Then the other is to sell in the local market. So here, if I sell 2 of the same or 3 different flavors, I'll go up different levels of the track, and you'll get victory points at the end of the game. Also some special abilities when you hit certain levels. So that's also can be very beneficial. Overall, like I said, the first 2 rounds were a little rough.
And I don't think that's the game's fault. It was the difficulty of the rule book.
Right.
I think that if I watched a playthrough online first, try and get it wrapped around where then I could help with the rule book, I think it would have made a huge difference.
I agree, because there were several points.
I didn't know it was going
to.
This is my copy of the game. I didn't know it was going to be that rough. Learning the game, I would have definitely prepared a little bit better.
Yeah. So, but now the second half, I was actually starting to enjoy what was happening. Going to collect tea, because you're really trying to manage. Yeah, you want a bunch of orange cubes that you could process at the same time, but if you're not careful, you'll end up not being able to process them effectively. Now, towards the end, where you get a bunch of these special tokens, that really helps drive it, but you would have had to build up your technology track. So there's a lot of, if then, like trying to organize the way you
like
do
any good
things.
worker placement's timing of
because
of your workers and what other people are doing, because it makes a huge difference.
Well, and I like the fact that you interact by, if you're processing and someone goes to that farm, it's triggering that processing. So it makes it like, you want your processing out, but then if you don't have enough cubes to process, it's
like Randy's last turn. He specifically didn't go on a road to prevent you from being able to
finish my process.
It wouldn't have helped me to go there.
Right.
Well, I had all along planned what I was going to do.
But that's still a valid strategy, knowing where other people are on that track, so that you don't help them out.
Right. And so it is very, with that, I thought that was a lot of good interplay without directly attacking each other. Like, I thought that was a cool way to kind of interact as a player function.
And also, if you're late in the game in particular, if you're in a situation where you don't think you're going to get to move up all the way because there's not an impetus to grab the cubes, you can, when you do play, put a worker over there and then jump all the way to the end, even though you would normally only move up 1 step. You don't get to trigger everything along the way, but it gives you an opportunity to still process those those
And
teas.
the other good part is if you get to process it, but you get the guy back.
Yeah.
So then you can use it potentially to then sell or do the scent
Use
action
your tea
or
somewhere.
something
Yeah.
to be able to get more points.
Definitely. So
I took advantage of the domestic market, which lets you not only sell cubes to the market locally and get victory points at the end of the game for them, but also gave you tokens that often let you resell over here too. So I was getting a double dose of selling. In one
however, these are worth a lot less victory points than those cards.
Yes, but if you have bad tea, it's a good way of getting rid
Oh,
of it.
absolutely. Yep, you are correct. It is a wonderful way to get rid of it. Overall, I liked the second half of the game. And I thought it was very interesting. Is it one of the best worker placements? No, but I think it's okay. I'm probably going to give this a 7.5. It was decent. It did all right.
Yeah, and I really don't want to poo-poo as far as the score goes for the first half of the game, because I agree the first half was really rough. But that's just as much our fault as it is the game.
Well, it's the rulebook's fault, to be completely fair.
I agree.
I mean, you should, in my opinion, you should never have to go online to watch a video.
I agree.
You should be able to take what's in the book and interpret it and play it.
And so, but I think the gameplay itself and overall, I liked it. It's a little bit heavier than what I thought. So, and I'm starting to slowly lean away from the heavier games, and I think it's right on that cusp of just how heavy I like my game. So it's just a little bit over the edge, but I liked it. I think a 7 is a good score.
Okay, what about you?
Yeah, I'm probably about a 7 on this. I mean, I like some of the mechanics of it. I don't think there's enough meat to it, in my opinion, of options for scoring the way I like to see it playing. You know, I did like the way the markets worked. And I always like tracks, but the tracks were all fairly vanilla. They were pretty much the same. So you didn't see any diversity from going from one track to another track, really. It was pretty much the same iconography you were getting no matter what you did.
There were different upgrades you were getting per thing, but it was still an upgrade.
But you still, I mean, you went up.
The more important part is that you're focusing on the type of tea. Yeah. So those tracks help that type of tea.
I didn't see a lot of opportunity to focus on one type of tea in this. You know, I started out, you know, you can play with variable player powers, which is what we did. My variable player power was built around yellow tea, and all the yellow tea was taken away before I ever got a chance to.
There was plenty. I mean, I didn't even use my variable player power once.
Well, being last on that first turn really hurt, because all the orange cubes are pretty much scattered to the nether regions.
No, your problem is you went to organize your tea first before actually picking up more tea.
Well, I thought, you know, I didn't know how the mechanics worked until after that, and it was like, well, I got 2 green, I might as well go ahead and process. Well, you know, you really want to have more.
You need to have 3. Sure. Well, and that was the thing. You had specifically said 3, and I was like, why is he going only for 2? Like, I was like, as soon as I got my 3, then that's
because all the 3 places I had orange that I could get a disc, which is something we didn't really talk about. When you take your cubes, if you manage to clear out a disc underneath, these are how you get the scents that you can use for scenting your tea. So if you clear it off, you get to take the disc and you can use it for scenting the tea later.
Yeah, I just want to point out I have 4 of those. I didn't use one of them.
I think that's a specific strategy that you have to kind of focus on.
Yeah,
it is, instead of really trying to worry about so much of, you know, trying to complete the market cards, you're focusing on scents.
Well, yeah, you can focus on it, or you can just fall back if you need it.
Right.
But you generally want to have the same color tokens. You want to have a multiplier that's based upon having the same color. And I have one of each colors, which doesn't really help a lot. It's because they're worth more points if you match the colors with the cubes, and you're pretty much selling one color cube every time. So, yeah, I think that, you know, to me, there wasn't enough variety in the different spaces I was going to. It was doing the same things, maybe in a different sequence, but they were still the same. There's aspects I did like. I liked the markets, and then the way that you put the cubes out based upon the weather, which also determined how wet or dry the tea was, I thought was interesting. But overall, I didn't find a lot of enjoyment as far as the processing, because it was pretty much the same actions.
But I like the engagement, though, if other players went. Like, you were still progressing, so...
So I think 7's a fair score.
All right. yeah, that's
There
our
you go.
take on it. Well, guys, we had an absolute blast. Fairly's taking out with each other. Hopefully, we'll catch
Yeah.
you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.